Well, I'm back this week, and today I'm not on my beautiful lake. I did go out, but right now I'm sitting in my dining room slash kitchen. And I could bring you this boring beige background, but my son says that there needs to be something better in the background, something for people to look at while they listen to. I would recommend just putting the video away and just listening today. But if you really want to look, go ahead and take a look at my somewhat messy kitchen and not much to look at. But I just want to say thanks for all the love. And I wanted to come back today and talk to you about those wounds, why we have them, how do we know if we have them, how we can heal them, and why I think it's important. Why we have wounds. Well, simplest answer I can give you is because we live in an imperfect world and we are surrounded by imperfect people. We make mistakes and bad choices. We hurt each other intentionally, most of the time unintentionally. Bad and crappy things just happen in this world, and these things cause wounds, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Many of us are carrying around wounds from our past and even clear back as far as our childhood, and we may not even know it. These wounds have shaped our beliefs, our behavior, our identity. They've affected us physically, psychologically, biologically, emotionally, and relationally. These wounds have disconnected us from ourselves, from others, and our world. So I want to share 3 stories, 3 wounds, examples of wounds from my childhood. I picked 3 that happened around the same time and show different kind of wounds. So these all happened about somewhere between the ages of 7 and 9. And I'm going to share them in order of how they happened and talk about how they've affected me, and hopefully this will help someone else out there. So the first one, I was sick. I was at home, I was in bed, kind of throwing up, that kind of maybe a flu or something, I don't know, stomach bug. Anyways, I really wanted my mom. I wanted her to come lay by me, hold me, just help me feel like I was going to be okay. And she had been gone shopping all day. And when she got home, I expressed my desire to have her lay with me, to be with me, to take care of me. And her answer did not come as I expected. She was quite short and abrupt. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something to the effect of, could you stop being so needy and just go lay in your bed? Came across very hurtful. I did go to my room, and that was very painful. I really needed her, and didn't expect that response. Nobody came to help me understand that. Nobody came to make that better. So this wound is what I would call a little T trauma, meaning it didn't like shake my whole world. It wasn't like a gaping wound. It was just a little wound. But it was a wound, and it stuck around, and it left its mark, its scar. And so yeah, it's there. It was there. I'll come back to this story when we talk about how we heal. The second wound I would call a big T trauma, or a big wound. And this one happened around the same time. I think I was around 7 or 8. And I was very sad, very unhappy little girl. And I didn't really know why. I often did a lot of self-wound inflicting. At the time, I used to use a hammer to kind of mash my ankle or something like that. I don't know. But I remember just being really sad and unhappy and not wanting to live. And it's not so much that I wanted to die, but I wasn't connected in my world. And I'd been taught about a heavenly father, a heavenly mother, my big brother, Jesus Christ. And I thought that maybe going to heaven would be a better option for me. And in my little girl brain, I think the best way I came up to try to make that happen was I went to bed this night and held my breath and put a pillow over my head and kind of just hoped that I wouldn't wake up the next morning. And this went on for 2 or 3 mornings, and obviously I woke up. That's more of a bigger T trauma. Just a big wound, and just no one came. No one saw this wound. No one knew this was going on. I didn't tell anyone that I was feeling this way, and nobody really noticed. So I just kind of carried this one in silence. Again, I'll come back to the healing part of this a little bit later. The third one, I was probably a little bit older, maybe 9, 10. And my sister and I were playing Barbies, and we used to make clothes. And I would take scissors, open them up, and push one end of the scissors through the fabric. And so I pushed it through, and it just kind of went in and out of the fabric. And I didn't really feel anything, notice anything until my sister started screaming, "Ah, blood!" And then I look down and I see blood just dripping out of my finger. So I start screaming, and immediately my dad came running in, my siblings, like everybody came running. And my dad just, I think I started running out of my room, holding my finger, And my dad met me, grabbed me, immediately took me into the bathroom, and he started running water under it, cleansing out the wound. And I remember being in awe that he just knew what to do, that he knew how to take care of this wound. And he's running it underwater. And I hear him say, "I think we're gonna have to go to the hospital and get stitches." And I think I started to faint because I remember him saying, "Grab a chair." And I don't know. I think I remember my brother bringing a chair in, but I don't remember much else from that. What I remember from that one, though, is someone came running. Someone came to help, and I got taken. Even though I don't really remember it, I got taken to the emergency room. And at the time, I was scared. The emotion that released was fear. And I was scared, didn't know what happened, but watching my dad know exactly what to do and watching him just take care of it and knowing to take me to the emergency room, knowing that they were going to have to put stitches. Everyone was just kind of, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. You're going to be okay." It just felt everyone just helping. So this didn't even end up being a wound because it was a physical wound, but it got stitched, and I don't bleed anymore. I have a little scar there. Sometimes if I hit it hard, I might have a little bit of a tingling sensation, nerve pain maybe. But for the most part, that wound healed. It was taken care of. Physically, that wound healed. And emotionally, there was no wound there because everyone, like my mom, my dad, my siblings, like the whole family just kind of, "It's okay, it's okay." And let me pass out, let my body do what I needed to do. The emotion just was able to kind of complete its cycle. And so there's really not, there's a memory there, but this is just a story. There's no wound. There's nothing left behind. It's healed. That's what we want all of our wounds to be, is healed. Just to be taken care of. And we can do that. So let me go to How do we know if we have wounds that are open wounds left behind that didn't get fully completed, fully taken care of? Um, let me give you just some basics to get started. I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but let me just give you some basics. One, if we overreact or underreact now to something, to a situation, and it's just like a huge overreaction or a huge underreaction, there's a good sign that the situation currently happening is bringing up an old wound. It's connecting to something that's open, left unprocessed, unhealed. When we have emotion connected to an old memory, let's say something triggers an old memory, and we get nervous, we start to feel something and shut it down. There's a clue that you might have a wound open. When a story or a memory from our past just keeps popping up and something in our system just doesn't feel right. Something about that memory doesn't feel right. That's another basic clue. So those are some things to just kind of watch out for. So how do we begin to heal? I want to go back for a minute and talk about these wounds, explain a little bit more, and then I'm going to give you today just one thing to start doing differently. Our brain wants to make meaning out of things. It's wired to do that. It's meant to do that. It likes to decide what things mean. And we don't always have all the information to make a good judgment, to make a good decision in how to proceed in action. If we're in danger, like when I got cut, my body immediately goes into flight. Like, I got to get this taken care of. So I start running towards help. And that help was coming. That was going to be my parents. I knew they were in the other room. I start going towards them. They were coming towards me. So my body, that's an instinctual reaction. My emotion, the feeling of fear that I was in danger, also physiologically, it just happens. I don't do anything to make that happen. It just happens based on the situation. So I take off to go get help because something's wrong. I've got evidence. I've got a gaping hole in my finger and it's bleeding. So that's what my body instinctually wants to do. And my family, my dad, let that happen. He let that emotion be there. No one told me I shouldn't feel fear. No one told me not to be scared. Nobody told me I was wrong for being scared. They just tried to calm the fear. Hey, it's going to be okay. It's okay. You have a wound. We're going to fix it. That fear was allowed to, that emotion of fear was allowed to just be there and complete its cycle. And I didn't have to second guess in my system. When my system felt fear and danger, my family was letting that back, was reflecting that exact thing back to me. Yep, you've got a problem, you've got a situation, and we're going to help you fix it. And it's okay that you're afraid, but we're going to help you. It's okay. So that was the emotion was able to complete. It matched the reflection I got back from the people around me, matched what I was feeling inside, and I got help. The wound got stitched, the bleeding stopped, and I was cared for and loved and perfectly done. Grateful for that. And while I still have a physical scar, I have 0 emotional scars from that experience. It completed itself. Now, if we go to the one about my mom and the way she responded to me, without any evidence, without any gathering any information, if I just let myself react, what I took from that is, what did I do wrong to cause her to be so mad at me or to not love me? That was the immediate conclusion that my brain came up with. She must not love me. She must be mad at me. That's typical of kids, typical if there's other things going on, typical because it wasn't a normal response. I spent a lot of years sick, and my mom spent hours laying by me, putting a cold washcloth to my head. That's the response I was expecting, that she would do that. Now, why that stayed is because there was no repair. There was no one to come in to make that go away. And I didn't have any other information to do that for myself. There was no other information. There was some chaos in my life, but I didn't understand what that was either. Now, looking back, I can tell you I've gained more information as the years have gone on that have helped me go back and heal that wound myself. Looking back, knowing what I know now and I didn't know then, is my mom had been diagnosed with breast cancer just a few months, some months before that, and was dealing with cancer, was trying to heal herself from cancer during that same time. She was on a lot of different medications. She was going through a lot of different things. And so for their circumstance, that was probably just a typical normal body response to a very tired, worn out mother trying to take care of 5 children, grocery shop, and maintain some normalcy back in her life, and not having spent a day shopping, coming home, probably being tired, not knowing how, not even thinking about how to respond to her daughter. Just, oh my gosh, leave me alone. And as a parent, and I've been a parent, so I understand this, that exhaustion from parenting, and then add cancer on that. Looking back, her response makes a lot more sense to me. And that was a pretty easy wound to heal when I had all of the information. And why didn't anybody come back later and say, why didn't she come back later and say, hey, I'm really sorry that I hurt your feelings? Well, I was raised in the 70s. This was the 70s. In my world, emotions weren't a big deal. We lived in an era of, a little bit of leftovers of the children are to be seen, not heard. You're crying, stop your crying or I'll give you something to cry about. That was kind of what was going on in the world at the time. So dealing with emotions, emotional health, that wasn't really a thing back then. There might have been some people who had an idea. There might have been some people who understood that. But in my world, that wasn't very common. So it wouldn't have really been expected for anybody to come in and see how I was feeling or how I was doing. So given all that information, yeah, that wound was pretty easy to go back in with the information I have now and just kind of heal that wound and give it space and time and the support that it needed and understanding. So it's not a big deal anymore. I understand her reaction. I know and can make sense of why she might have responded that way. It didn't have anything to do with whether or not she loved me or anything to do with whether or not she was mad at me. It had more to do with the fact that she was dealing with motherhood and cancer. I hope that makes sense. The third one, that was coming from a deep wound that I'll talk about later. And again, understanding that the 70s, even the 80s, early 80s, not a big time where emotional health was a big deal in our world, in our society. So no one was looking, no one really understood that kind of behavior, my behavior, what I was going through, the sadness. So there was really nothing to see versus the physical wound. There was a gaping hole in my finger and blood. So I cut some slack, and we'll come back to that one, and that one takes a little more depth. That's a little bit later on. But I hope you see that the brain wants to make sense out of things and will come to the best conclusion it can to take care of the situation. But it doesn't always have all the information. Go back to my physical wound. Had I not had a caring family to help heal that wound, to make the emotion okay, it could have been very different. Had they shamed me, had they said, there's nothing there's no reason for you to be crying. There's no reason for you to be scared. This is nothing. Just get over it. Or worse, had no one come to my rescue, had no one been there to help heal it or stitch it up, it might have been a different story. There might be an emotional wound there. But in this case, that story, in my opinion, was handled perfectly and flawlessly. And I was given everything that I needed to completely heal that, physically and emotionally. Know that wherever we're wounded, whether we receive the wound physically, emotionally, or spiritually, those things are all connected and they affect each other. So we can have emotional buried wounds that start affecting us physically. They can start making us sick. Again, we'll get into that later. To wrap up this video, it's a little bit lengthy, but to wrap it up, let me give you at least one way to begin healing. I want you to remember that little hinges can swing big doors. So this one tip can go a long ways. And that tip is to replace criticism or meaning making with curiosity. So if you've got wounds coming up, stories coming up that you always tell yourself, or people that you're angry with, or someone that currently does something to hurt you, instead of quickly deciding what that means, or instead of criticizing or making a quick decision about why they did what they did, or deciding what their intentions are, replace all of that with curiosity. Ask questions. Try to understand the situation better. Understand yourself better. So when I have this memory of wanting to go to heaven, wanting to die, wanting to just have something different in my life, when this would come up, I used to criticize myself for having that. Like, why? You had a good life. Why would you want to die? Why would you even think that? That's so selfish. That's so awful. What a stupid girl you were. Those are criticisms. Those are quick judgments. I don't have all the information. So instead, I learned to get curious. Why would a 7-year-old be so disconnected from her world? What could have possibly gone on or could have gone on that would cause me to be so unhappy and sad in my world? And once I started getting curious and trying to understand, that's when myself started to let myself learn what was going on in her world. So for today, thank you for bearing with me if you did. If not, I understand it's a long video. But these things are really important to me, and helping my human family is super important to me because my life is changing and has changed drastically. I carried these wounds around for a long time. Why is it important to heal? Because it sets us free. Healing isn't about blaming ourselves or someone else. It's not about shaming ourselves or someone else. It's about understanding, allowing, and honoring our thoughts and feelings and for what they are, and honoring who we are and the experiences we've had, and letting those experiences be what they are and what they were meant to be. And allowing those emotions, if they didn't get a chance to complete themselves, to complete themselves. Going back in and allowing ourselves to feel. You might hear often in the world today, Feeling is healing. It's true. In order to heal, we have to feel. Emotions are physiological. They happen. They're natural. We're meant to feel, and we're humans. We have a range of emotions, and we need to allow ourselves to feel those and let those emotions complete their cycle. They're like energy balls, and once they're released, they need to complete that cycle. And if they don't complete that cycle, that emotion's going to be stuck, and it gets stuck in our system. So we need to allow ourselves and honor those experiences that we've had and support them if we didn't have support at the time. If they've been left open, we need to allow them to heal. So the first step is just replace meaning-making, judgments, criticism with curiosity. Start to understand. Start to ask questions to understand why this wound is there, where it comes from, and what message it has to share with you. And know that as we do this work, as we go in and we clean out these old wounds, we clean out these areas in our life, and as we release these emotions, we let them complete, they'll release naturally. And it'll free up energy to do the things we really want to do rather than be stuck in trauma. I'll be back with more. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have questions, comments, feel free to leave them. And appreciate the likes, appreciate your support. And just want you to know that these wounds can cause a lot of damage in our life. But the good news is we can heal them, we can repair them, and we can move on and live a happier, healthier life. So here's to that. See you next time.